Perfect. And we are live and ready to go. So let's go ahead and jump into things. No need to spend too much time on an intro, but thanks guys for joining. I think today we're kind of going to talk a little bit about Receipts, our new product launch, as well as just some up and coming things in the roadmap for Wooliptic and just kind of general discussion around some of the AI governance and provenance that we are seeing everywhere. So today joining us is Avinash, the founder and CEO, as well as Srinivas, co-founder and VP of engineering, and John, our kind of newly added founding sales lead. So I think just on that note, if I think we could just start on the provenance side of things. Avinash, maybe kicking this to you. Why is AI provenance so important?
No, that's a great question. We have all been kind of grappling with it on a day-to-day basis over the past maybe a year and a half. But the way I like to kind of postulate what the problem is, like, every day there is thousands, if not millions of decisions that are made via AI assistants. Codes being written, documents are being drafted, strategies are being formed. And if you think about it, almost none of it leaves a trace. If you actually take a step back, think about yesterday or think about last week. How many times did you paste something into, say, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or any one of your favorite AI chatbots and use the output directly? And then if you ask yourself, if someone audited that, say 3 months or 6 months from now, could you actually prove what was AI generated, what wasn't? Could you prove which AI, which version? And most importantly, what were the prompts that you supplied to the LLM to produce the output that you got? And the honest answer, if one were really honest with themselves, is no. It's not a personal failure by any measure. It's a huge structural gap. AI is now sitting inside almost every workflow. It's a black box that produces outputs, leaves no fingerprints. And I define that gap as provenance. And if you actually think about every other part of software engineering, provenance is practically considered non-negotiable. So that's where I come from in terms of how to postulate what the problem around the lack of provenance is all about.
So I actually think that ties pretty nicely into Receipts as a whole too. So maybe if you also want to give an overview of that, just for anybody watching who maybe hasn't been keeping up with us on socials, if you want to talk a little bit about what Receipts is and kind of how it actually solves that problem.
Yeah, so if you think about receipts, we called it receipts because anytime anyone asks you for something, it's become a popular term nowadays in many debates too. Hey, he or she brought his or her receipts to this argument. And we felt we could do the same for AI. And the way I kind of structure this is that you could categorize these under 3 categories. One is the use of AI via your favorite chatbot, right? Be it Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, what have you. The second category I would call autonomous AI, where everything is happening through some agents running in the background. And the third, which is more nuanced and which is actually, in my opinion, going to be the most dangerous, is the prevalence or the usage in the prevalence in the usage of coding agents, where, for instance, take tools like Claude Code or Codex. They generate a lot of code, and you do not have any idea to track what was AI generated, and if there was a human in the loop who went and did some additional work. There's no way to tell the difference. There's no way to kind of look at code, look at like a particular git commit and basically say, hey, this commit was AI generated, and the complete lack of signals, like what prompts led to AI to generate that code. These are all completely absent. These are completely large gaps. So these are the big 3 categories that if you can solve, I think one can claim that they have actually solved the provenance problem in its entirety. And I believe that's what we have actually addressed. What I actually wanted to do was showcase how this manifests itself in each of these three categories, and perhaps take it from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think a demo and kind of being able to show it makes a lot of sense. So let's do it.
Perfect. So what I'm going to show you is how, typically one interacts with any of your favorite chatbots. But the takeaway message for you ought to be that every message, every response is timestamped and cryptographically audited on our whale chain platform. You can actually prove what was asked, what was returned, and when. And you can prove that it has not been tampered with. And you could also say that if this conversation influenced a document, a decision, or a code base, you can link the trail to that artifact. And that, to me, is actually governance in its totality. It's not just a document sitting in a drawer somewhere. It will actually be machine readable, kind of immutable evidence for how AI was used. So, on that good note, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to show you guys a couple of things.
As Avinash is loading that up, I'll just add something here. So what's crucial for our customers is what I like to call the portability of trust. So usually in audit, it takes weeks of manual data gathering, if not months. With Elliptic, you're looking at a one-click audit, which Avinash is going to show you. We're basically turning like a month-long compliance headache into a 30-second verification process, and that is a massive operational savings.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Welcome back, Avinash.
No,
And
sorry.
John, you've stayed really close, kind of on the regulation side of things as well. And so I'm kind of curious from your perspective, as you're talking to potential leads and clients, how big is this kind of provenance and cryptographic log portion in those conversations? And do you feel like a lot of the conversations do evolve to talking about, the logs that we have right now are not actually production ready, or do you feel like everybody's still kind of warming up to the idea that you do need this more serious infrastructure when it comes to managing your AI?
So, is it for me or for John?
That was for John. That was for John. But if you have everything up, Avinash, you can.
No, yeah, sure. Sorry, John, I don't mean to cut you off, but see, I'll make a bold stand here. There's a lot of people talking about these being potential problems, and no one has a solution. And the solutions that exist, in my opinion, are extremely underwhelming. You cannot tell me that you log something in a file, and that's my audit log. Right? That can be tampered with, that could be lost, that could be deleted, that could be modified. That's not truly a trail. That's a trail. It's like a fox walking on sand. There's this claim that the fox walks and uses its tail to kind of erase its footprints. That's not the kind of trail that you want. You want something that is mathematically provable, because truth and fact are the same only in the world of mathematics. And that's what we want to bring to the table. I will actually take a step further, and I would say, and this is an even bigger claim that I want to make. I think the world of Web3 and AI will have to come together. That's the only way you're going to solve this problem correctly. Now, see, you could say, hey, are we going to be successful? Is someone else going to be? I don't care who is successful. My point being that if this problem is solved, whoever is successful in solving this problem would have to follow these kind of principles. If not, you're kidding yourself. And the reason for that is very simple, because a lot of these problems have been solved in the Web3 world. Okay. And it always behooves any astute individual, be it an engineer or if you're in any other discipline, if problems have already been solved, you got to pull them in and leverage them. I mean, it's not like it's not like any kind of a cataclysmic event that has come out and kind of wiped out all our memories. There's a lot of problems that have been addressed, and it behooves us to kind of look at it and pull them in. And I will touch upon these as I walk through what I want to show you. One of the fundamental requirements for being able to audit something is to have the ability to have a notion of identity. That's completely lost in AI. There's no such thing. Now, people are starting to ask these questions about, should agents have identity, or should the identity of a human be tagged with an agent? And these are all good questions, but I think we are way beyond questions. We have actually solved these problems. Okay. So let me start by showing you something really simple, but that drives home a point as to what we mean when we bring auditability and governance to the world of AI. Seeing helps one wrap their head around things, and seeing is believing. And then from whatever you see, you can now extend your imagination and see how it applies to the digital world. When I say digital world, I mean in a programmatic world. Okay. So let me quickly, can you guys see this is my chat GPT. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
So when you log on to any of your favorite AI assistants, you always log in with your email ID and password. Okay, that's quote unquote your identity, but it's not used for anything, right? I mean, none of these chatbot developers care about that. So what we did, and if you don't have an identity, you cannot audit anything because you don't know who did it. You don't know who it is. So how are you going to track what he or she did? The way we address that problem in a browser setting is our notion of an identity manifests itself as a cryptographic wallet, and it will manifest itself as a Chrome browser plugin. And in this wallet, on top, you have an opt-in, which basically says enable receipts. Now, if I enable this, and then if I come to my ChatGPT environment, let me ask a very simple question. Okay, this is just for illustration purposes, but it will drive home a point. So if I were to say, what is the since this is like the flavor of the last 2 months, I'm just going to ask, what is the IRGC? Okay. And I'm going to wait for it to spit out a response before I show you something interesting. Now, while this is loading, I just wanted to give you guys a quick primer on what the Whalechain platform is all about. The Whalechain platform is nothing but a globally distributed, cryptographically secure compute platform on which applications can be deployed and they can be executed in a sandboxed environment. The way it is deployed, it's a collection of what we call whale pods, and each whale pod, think of it as a collection of nodes or a cluster. So if you look at this network that I'm using, this is a dashboard to the Whalechain platform. It's made up of 3 pods. We have one in Asia Pac, one in the US West Coast, and one in the middle that's mainly for manageability purposes. Consumers of this platform need not really worry about it. So if I drill down into my US West Coast pod, it's made up of these nodes. Now, this is a very small network that I use basically for demo purposes, and all these nodes are on GCP. But you can easily envision this to be an overlay on top of all the 3 public cloud providers, including the modern neoclouds like the Vercels of the world and private data centers. So what does this give you? Any application that is deployed on this platform will be naturally immune to regional cloud outages. Now, these are all problems that are largely unsolved, and they're going to carry over into the AI world. So looking at it holistically is, in my mind, the right way to do things. Now, if you look at the tab here that says applets, you click on them. These are the applications that have been deployed on top of our platform. And when I say applications, think any Web2 app, Web3 app, AI agents, and MCP servers. Now, this dashboard is a traditional Web2 app, which itself is deployed on the Whalechain platform. Now, take a step back and think. The dashboard is deployed on the very platform that it is supposed to monitor. So talk about eating your own dog food. This is a classic example of that. Now, this is a very, very, very quick primer on what the Whalechain platform is all about. But let's go back to where we started. I asked this question in ChatGPT. Now, I could come here and I could delete my chat. And if I do that, this is basically your chat history is basically your audit trail. If I delete that, you are that fox that I was talking about, walking on the sand and using its tail to wipe its footprints off. But what we do is, because you had this cryptographic wallet installed with receipts enabled, if you go into my transactions tab on my dashboard, you will see 3 minutes ago this identity, and that's the identity in my wallet. And you can see it right here, B2D, whatever. And that's what this is. If I click on this, I come over here, and if I say show receipts, it will tell you what is the IRGC and the response that came out of it to tell you which AI and which version. There is some additional stuff that we're going to add to this, so you will also be able to track how many tokens were consumed, et cetera, et cetera. So you have now complete visibility as to how AI is being used within your organization. If this involved making calls to various MCPs that you might have configured, then you can completely audit who made which tool call on which MCP, what arguments were passed to that MCP, what response was gotten back. End-to-end provenance can be realized. So that is for the AI part of the AI chatbot side of the house. So when I define three categories, one was AI chatbot, but AI chatbot is nothing but a very fancy agent where you can have human interactions going on. And so if you can do this with AI chatbots, you can easily realize the same idea carries over to every other AI manifestation. I'm going to pause for a second. Is this clear thus far?
I think it's particularly interesting too when thinking about kind of the consumer and where this actually fits in a company and kind of their tech stack. It seems like a very light infrastructure burden with a very, important payout. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. So before I expound more on that, I'm going to show it to you in one more manner. Like this is Gemini. I could come to Gemini. If I go to my wallet, I have enabled receipts. So if I come to Gemini, let me ask a very simple question. What is the weather in Los Altos right now? And once it spits out its response, you come back over here. And if I refresh my transactions page, you will see less than a minute ago, this identity. Click on the transaction details and you do show receipts. It'll tell you what's the weather in Los Altos right now. And this was a response, and the question actually came in from Gemini. So think about this. Different versions of AI, but the same machine readable, verifiable audit. And if you think about the integration that we had to perform in order to get this going, we are not talking to the folks at OpenAI. We are not talking to the folks at Google and Gemini. We just drop in a wallet and we are able to realize this entire capability. So if anyone wants to get onboarded, it's less than 5 minutes. Just go to Chrome Web Store, pull the wallet, deploy it as a Chrome browser plugin, enable receipts. You're good to go. As simple as that. So the integration is so seamless that you will think it's a natural extension of the virtual AI assistant that you're using. That makes sense? I hope that answers your question that you were asking, Sarah, about the simplicity.
Yeah, Sarah, like from a business standpoint, I would say like without receipts, companies are essentially flying blind into a regulatory storm. Like this isn't just like a technical log. This is a legal safety net, honestly.
See, I mean,
great way to put it.
What I would add to that is, and the reason I'm doing that is because the takeaway should not be that, hey, this is only for those who need regulations. This is also for your own sanity, because this is influencing decisions, right? You might do something now, take the output and make some decisions based on that. Maybe draft a document and put it out there. And then 2 weeks later or a month later, there's no way you're going to remember what you did to get there. How are you going to track all that? How are you going to know that these were the choices I made in order to kind of make this informed decision? And this is what points to that. Regulations or not, you also need to have an internal regulatory kind of a system, right? I mean, what am I doing here? How do I drive accountability? And this is the only way to do it. Right now, everyone's running at light speed, but no one's thinking about, hey, I'm doing all this, but I don't know how I got there. And that's a question. Even in the software engineering world, if you ask any developer worth his or her salt, or actually, I'll talk about myself. I mean, I do all these things, and 2 weeks later, if anyone asks me, hey, what is that? Then I'll have to go look. I have to think, I have to know what I did, because you're going to forget, because there's so many things you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And now added to this mess, you have all these prompts that you gave for someone else to do that work. And you have no idea to go and even analyze how the hell did I get there? And this is the way you kind of accomplish that.
I think it's
In my
particularly
opinion,
interesting with this.
this should be part of your DNA if you're leveraging AI. That should be the goal. That should be the takeaway. You may not go to it every
Especially,
day, but you have it there in case you need it. Sorry.
no, all good. As it extends to, agent to agent, in particular, I think is kind of the next wave that we see of AI. And so much is done that is completely, when thinking of black box, I think that's what a lot of people think of nowadays is kind of you have an agent, maybe you have the initial prompt. That's fantastic and needs to be tracked. But then what does that agent do specifically? What are the tool calls they're making? What is the result of that? And then, it loops on itself all over again. And being able to almost have this as infrastructure on top of that agent to agent action and not even having to, go through the burden of setting this up to monitor those agents, I think is going to be incredibly important. And I think,
See, and Sarah, and it's actually a good segue for the next portion of the demo, right? So there is every organization or enterprise you look at, you have either one incarnation of Cloud Code, Codex, or Cursor being deployed, right? Now, engineering leaders, right, they need visibility into how these AI tools are being used, what percentage of their code base is AI authored, right? So you need visibility into these things so that you have complete traceability on who did what, right? And there's also another flavor that I would say in this problem space that needs to be addressed, right? IP and liability blind spots, right? Like you need to be able to track which code was human written versus AI generated so that you can avoid pitfalls and legal risks and audits, M&A and IP disputes. All this, you can get ahead of it. And as Avinash kind of showcases how we have done this for Claude from a prominence perspective, right? It will become very clear that these kind of tools are an essential in this world of AI. Without this, it is like you can have people just pushing random things, and engineering leaders or organizations will have no visibility into what is being AI driven and what is being done manually.
So what I would actually do before I even get into the coding agents part, if you look at what's happening with agentic AI, the points that you alluded to, an agent makes a bunch of tool calls. An agent could talk to another agent, right? And an agent should be able to discover other agents if they are there and see if they could be able to leverage them. To be very direct, in my opinion, this entire set of problems, whatever solutions that exist out there, are frankly underwhelming. Okay, without naming names, there are announcements being made about, oh, here is this platform on which you can come and deploy agents. It's a glorified Kubernetes instance. That's underwhelming. Now, the platform that we provide in the form of Whalechain, you deploy your agents there. What do you get? Your agents will be immune to regional cloud outages. All this auditing and all that tracking is intrinsically delivered for you. Meaning, as an agent developer, you only need to focus on what you want to build. You don't have to worry about what all these orthogonal problems, because the runtime will intrinsically deliver that for you. So you have agents deployed, you have someone coming in and triggering an action, their identity gets passed as a principal, and it is carried over every step of the way. It will be carried over to your tool calls. It will be carried over to cross-agent calls. All these things, if you do not have a runtime that is serving that up for you, you will have to kind of code them every single time into your agents. Now you're doing work that is orthogonal to the work that you are actually been tasked to do. What we provide is a platform where all these things are intrinsically provided. But having said that, I mean, I encourage everyone to look up docs.whaleptic.ai and see how to build agents using our SDK and kind of get all these benefits for free, right? Because the runtime will intrinsically deliver it for you. But having said that, we are in an industry where things are moving so fast. People have existing infrastructure. What do you do for them? How can we help them? So what we did, we can bring many of our capabilities to their environment, and we can do it in a very, not as seamless as it would be if you were running on us, but as seamless as it can get in the absence of a runtime, right? So since I have my screen shared, if you go over, this is um, a simple agent that was written using GPT agent SDK. And if you look at how can we bring audits, seamless audits to this environment, all you want to do is to decorate your agent calls with this attribute. You just say add client.audit, and this is how client is instantiated. There are libraries that are available that you can download and just import as part of your environment, and you will automatically start seeing audits show up in this nature on top of our platform. Okay, and it will be able to track who was the one who initiated that particular action. So that's for auditing purposes. The other big problem that actually needs to be addressed, and this is all kind of linked together, it's governance, not just in terms of auditability, it is also in terms of enforceability. Who can access what parts of the system and who cannot? And how can you do that without developers having to worry about it? Now, the way you do that, if you are having an existing agentic environment, is you just use our libraries and you just put a decorator on top of your tool calls, for instance. So this search is a classic example of an MCP written using fast MCP. You could build MCPs using our system too. I would always encourage that, and we can talk about that as to why, perhaps at a later point in time. But the key driving point here is just put this decorator here, and the way you read this is anyone in the engineering org in the broader Whale organization will be able to execute the search tool call, and no one else will be able to. So now I can enforce very simply which groups have access to which parts of your system. This is non-existent today. If you look at any of the existing identity providers, they all exist for a human in the loop, to basically authorize a human in the loop. They are not built for the agentic world. This is the example of something that is fundamentally developed for autonomous AI. Okay, I wanted to show this because this is how you can bring, this is the second category that I was talking about. One was chatbots, the other is agents running in the wild and how we can bring order to them. And the last part that I want to show you is how we can bring this to coding agents. And we started off with Claude Code to begin with. And I'll give you the engineering reason behind why we did that. And why we didn't do that with any other coding agent. And the reason is primarily this. Claude Code allows you to plug into itself. It provides these hooks that you can kind of hook into and then do whatever you want to do to make the entire experience seamless. None of the other coding agents seem to do that at this point in time. So in a bid to do that, what we have actually also done is Codex, which is from OpenAI, is completely open source. So we have taken that and added the hook capability to Codex. We don't mind giving that back if they're interested. You can take it. But they don't accept pull requests right now, but it's available. And so once you have those hooks inside Codex as intrinsically delivered, then you can realize the same things that we do with Cloud Code even with Codex. Okay, that's FYI. Now, having said that, what does it look like? Now, I'm not going to show you the whole thing because we'll run out of time. But in order to kind of showcase how we integrate into Claude, what I did was I tried to wipe code a project. Now, this is definitely not a lesson in how to wipe code. I'm not the expert there. This is definitely not a tutorial on how to use Claude Code either, but this is what I want you to take away from this is what happens when Claude Code does its things and how we can track it and provide end-to-end provenance for coding environments. Call it coding provenance, for lack of a better way of putting it. So what I did in my bit to wipe code an app, this is a non-trivial app. The app itself is not the focus. Basically, it's a task flow app that can provide Kanban boards, etc., to become more efficient in managing your tasks. And what I deliberately did is I broke this down into kind of 6 phases as I built this out, completely using Cloud Code. I didn't write a single line of code. And each phase was broken down into subphases. And what you're seeing here are the prompts that I actually supplied to Cloud Code to actually build this out in stages. Now, I actually have completed till phase 1.3. Phase 2 is what I was going to start with, but I'm not going to show you the whole thing because each time Claude does something, it'll ask you, hey, do you want to accept these changes? Obviously, you don't want to see me just hit 1, 1, 1, 1 all the time. But since I'm done with phase 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, I'll show you how it manifests itself at our end and shows you how you can track things. And at the same time, in parallel, I can fire this one off, which is phase 2 of my vibe coding exercise. In particular, this whole prompt that's part of phase 2.1. So having said that, let me kick that off. So I have my Cloud Code environment over here. I'm just going to paste this in here. And I'm going to say go. And while it is doing that, I'm going to show you a couple of things with whatever happened in my previous workflows. So let this go. And what we did, in a sense, to track all this, we have complete integrations into Cloud Code. So we will manifest as a plugin. You install the plugin. And then the rest of the workflow is like how you would use Claude. You wouldn't even know that something like this is happening behind the scenes. We developed an applet called Coden6, which is actually deployed on the Whalechain platform. And this is how it looks like. So the URL for that will be coden6.veloptic.ai. You just provide a repository URL, a Git repo URL, and just say which branch. Now I am on, this is the one that I'm vibe coding right now. And this is my branch. And you could see these are all the Git check-ins that have happened. Now, if you look, let me show you something interesting here. What I've done here is phase 1A. This is the Git commit. So if I click on the Git commit, this is something that everyone is familiar with, right? But when you see Git commits, the signal is actually lost because you don't know who actually did the changes, whether it was the AI agent or whether it was a developer, if there was co-editing going on. You will never know what happened. So what we do is for each Git commit, we can track what are called receipts. And that's what you will see over here. If I click on receipts, you will see these were all the files that were modified. And if I were to open up any one of them, you will be able to tell what the coding agent actually did, what line, and this is in what is called an agent trace format. And I think the industry is trying to formalize on that. I think it was authored by Cursor, if I'm not wrong. And I think everyone is trying to kind of get on that bandwagon. So it basically shows you what AI did, how many tokens were used, what lines were modified. And in particular, we also track what were the prompts that led to that particular change in the code. So if you look at this JSON was created. It was done by Cloud Code. And this was a user prompt that led to this output. So you can easily check that this user prompt is nothing but what I had provided in phase 1.1, which is right here. Okay. So end-to-end provenance, you can actually stitch the causal events that led to that particular Git commit. Imagine how important it will be for debugging purposes. And anyone who's doing any serious software engineering, whenever there's a bug you hit in production, we always try to kind of narrow it down to which Git commit was the culprit. And if you go to a Git commit of this nature, now you'll be able to tell, hey, this is how we landed up here. This is what the coding agent did. These were the prompts that were given, and this is how we got here. And you can do it on a per file basis. And we will track that all for you seamlessly, unbeknownst to the developer. And the only integration point is install our plugin inside your Cloud Code environment. That's the integration hook, basically. Now, if you come back here, this is going to ask me to make a bunch of changes. I'm just going to keep saying accept the changes as it goes through it. But it's a good point to kind of pause and ask, Is this clear? Any follow-up questions?
I'm going to emphasize one thing here, Avinash, actually. So I think that there's a lot of tools out there that can tell you what happened. Elliptic's the only tool that can tell you how and why it happened, and we provide forensic proof to back it up. So I think if you're building an AI today without a system of record, you're basically accumulating a bunch of compliance debt that will eventually come due. So this tool is just so important in coding environments with agents.
No, exactly. I mean, and see, we started jumping on this bandwagon, and this was a problem that even I wanted to solve, right? I mean, there are some people who approach things as a skeptic, right? And I always kind of do that. And you know the famous saying that an optimist is a pessimist with experience. So you really need to be skeptical about certain things, but keep an open mind, willing to be stand corrected. This is very useful. There's a lot of context that you need to supply to Cloud Code in order to get to where you want to get. And you will not remember what you did, maybe a month. In my case, in 2 days. I'm luckily my brother runs engineering, and I keep talking to him about some of my thoughts. He is my memory bank, but that's not going to work. I mean, everyone's going to have someone who's going to serve that memory bank for you. So this is a way to kind of get there. You will know exactly which prompt led to what decision. And that, I think, is critical. So what I'm doing here, guys, is that, that prompt that I fed, it's generating a bunch of stuff for me. I'm going to show you how we track that and how that manifests itself into a Git commit. So I'm going to just let this run in the background.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and kind of covering the, human in the loop side of things, agent to agent, and actually being able to track some of this, particularly for coding agents. I think the statistics most recently that have come out is somewhere between 30 to 50%, I think, of a lot of enterprise code base is actually AI written or generated. And so having, John, to your point, more forensic proof of what actually happened is going to be very critical. And I think, we have seen a lot of rapid development in AI, and there's such a need for companies to take this on. And some of the risks, security risks, I think, are being talked about, but a lot of kind of the longer term implications of just rushing to market, AI tools are going to bite people in the butt. That might be in court, it might be somewhere else, and I think this kind of solves a lot of those problems.
No, I think you said that right. And by the way, this wipe coding exercise of that particular phase is done. So you guys saw, I just fed in a prompt, made a bunch of changes. I just accepted it. If I come over here and if I do a git status, you will see a bunch of changes have happened. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how we track this. You guys really don't need to be concerned about. It's happening unbeknownst to you. But if I just do this, we are tracking all this, including the session of the Cloud Agent and which branch you're working on, et cetera, and every file that is modified, we're tracking the receipt ID with it because the audits have already gone in. And what I'll do now is I'm going to just do, this is standard Git development workflow. I mean, nothing should be a surprise here. I do git add, I do git status. These are the ones that need to be committed. I'm going to commit them. I'll basically say my phase 2A is now done. That's the git message. And then let's push this. I'll show you guys something else. So these receipts that were tracked, they were already audited. And so you will be able to see those audits. So a bunch of audits come in over here on as transactions. But more importantly, if you go to my Codensics environment, you see it's automatically refreshed and it said, this is the latest git commit. Phase 2A is now done. If you go in here, that's standard git output. We are not interested in that. Everyone's familiar with that. But there are receipts that are tracked along with this. If I go into receipts, and this will basically tell you these were the files that were modified, and these were the receipts that were associated with these files. And if I open them, it will basically tell you how many tokens that were used, how many lines, which lines were modified, who modified them, and then you can also see that for this particular file, it'll also track what is the user prompt that led to this modification. And these were the tokens that were used. And these were the ranges within the, these are all agent trace format. If you're not familiar with it, Cursor has a very excellent spec that you guys are welcome to read, but this captures the entire prompt. So you know now that this modification was tied to this particular prompt. So you know exactly the entire causal history that led to this particular commit. So that was me kind of live wipe coding this to show you how Codensics gets implicitly tied in.
Fantastic. Thanks for showing that, Avinash. I think that's definitely something that does not exist in the market right now. Well, until us, I suppose. But I think that's going to be incredibly useful. John, in conversations that you're kind of having, you know, and I think maybe the audio clipped out a little bit earlier when we were talking about this. But in production AI deployments, is kind of this level of security and thought about logs versus cryptographic logs something that's being discussed and taken seriously? I think governance is spoken about quite often, but what are you kind of seeing in conversations with clients and leads?
Yeah, so I talk to C-suite leaders pretty much every day, and one of the things I'm hearing is like, you know, they're not just worried about AI failing, they're worried about not being able to prove why it made a specific decision 6 months ago, right? So like without receipts, like I mentioned earlier, companies you're flying blind, man. Like you need this. Like the regulations are coming. The EU AI Act is due in August. We got US regulations coming. Like if you're building an AI and you don't have this, it's irresponsible, honestly.
See, if there's one takeaway from whatever you guys saw, hopefully it was clear. I put a lot of thought into how this could be articulated. There's a lot to say, but not as much time in a webinar. The takeaway ought to be this, in my mind, is governance. It's not just some policy document sitting somewhere. I showed it to you. It's actual machine readable on-chain evidence of how AI was used and what the output was that was delivered as a result of all the input that you gave AI. And I believe this amount of traceability and verifiability, sans this, I don't think anyone should go into production with AI. That's my personal opinion. And anyone interested in learning more, guys, reach out to me on LinkedIn, DM me. I typically respond to anyone and everyone who reaches out to me. This is exciting stuff. So please do. If you have questions, if you want to know how to try this out, what the next steps ought to be for you guys, I'm here to answer them. Please reach out.
Any closing remarks from us, John, from you guys before? I think the timing should wrap up pretty nicely.
Now, see, in terms of using this, right, from what Avinash showed from an AI code provenance, you can see that it's a zero friction plugin for Cloud Code, right? So what I would, as I said, if you're talking about AI code provenance, I think Veliptic is the solution out there in the market. I don't think there's anyone out there who provides this level of AI provenance today.
100%. I just say, like, you know, Codensics specifically, it's carving out a new category, which you mentioned, agentic provenance. And it's really, we have the only solution designed to solve the ghost code problem, because we treat AI reasoning as like a first-class security citizen, which a lot of other companies are not doing that.
Exactly.
Very well said. Well, thanks guys for the time today. Thanks everybody watching. Hopefully we'll get a few more of these on the calendar more regularly, but I think that covered everything nicely. And, you know, come to our website, williptic.ai, reach out to any of us on LinkedIn for questions or more in-depth call. And you can always check out our docs.williptic.ai for further information if you want to play around yourself. So thanks everybody. And yeah.
Even our Discord channel.
Yeah.
Discord channel, that too. All right.
Cool.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.